TGIF, thank God it's Friday. It's time for the Ring of Honor post show as we review episode 64, as it's all about Proving Ground.
I am your forever ROH Women's Champion, your fallen goddess, the Alpha, the Minion, Overlord, the ROH Gatekeeper. But most of all, I am the best in the world, Athena, and you are watching Women's Wrestling Talk.
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
Women's Wrestling Talk, the #1 women's wrestling network on the planet.
Well, hey guys, happy Friday to you and welcome to Women's Wrestling Talk, the #1 women's wrestling network on the planet. I am your professor, Teflon G, GB, Gerard, whatever you feel like calling me today. It's all good. And today we are talking all about episode 64 of Ring of Honor, the latest episode, which aired last night on Honor Club. Thankfully, I am not alone. Of course, I am joined by the boss lady. TK, how are you?
What's up? Good morning. Happy Friday. Whew. I don't know if it's thank God it's Friday, but happy Friday.
Look, I'm glad that we are at Friday. It's been quite the week for sure, for sure. How are things going?
Pretty good. ROH is great. Wrestling's great. Double Nothing's coming up next week.
Yeah, it's a lot.
Summer full of a lot of traveling and events.
Absolutely, absolutely. And it's they call it the summer of punk, but we've got a whole lot going on this summer, and that's definitely a good thing. So it's time to hop into episode 64 of Ring of Honor, which took place, of course, last night. And this episode took place from Edmonton in Canada. And this episode was interesting for a few reasons. There was a lot of anticipation about this episode. If you remember, a lot of the news last week was about a taping that would air on this episode involving Rachel Ellering and Sky Blue. So we'll get into that match and several of the other things that are happening on this episode. But it starts off, of course, with a Proving Ground match, and Proving Ground ends up being kind of a theme going throughout this show. 6 matches, 3 of them are Proving Ground matches. And again, if you're brand new to the concept of Ring of Honor, Proving Ground matches are 10-minute in time limit, and it's a match between a champion and their challenger. If the challenger is able to either get a win over the champion or last the 10-minute time limit, then they will get an opportunity at a title match. And so in this match, we get Kyle Fletcher, the World Television Champion, going against Mentalo, who we ended up learning a lot about because I wasn't familiar with Mentalo coming into this particular episode. What were your thoughts on this match?
Yeah, throughout the whole episode, the commentator is really diving into who the people we aren't as familiar with. Was really, really good. So yeah, learned a lot, definitely been around for a minute. So he is new to us, but not new to a lot of folks. Well, I really like the concept of Proving Grounds. And I think it should be applied to a lot of different promotions, because then it doesn't seem like, hey, we're just picking this person because we think they should be at the top of the ladder. Like, well, where's the ladder? Whose ladder is it?
Right.
So I really like this concept. However, it feels like, and correct me if I'm wrong, since we have been covering the show, and since there have been some Proving Grounds here and there, has anybody actually hit the 10-minute mark? Because it doesn't seem like they do.
So the most recent one where that happened was the Infantry when they battled the Undisputed Kingdom, and that was the night before Supercard of Honor. They lasted the full 10 minutes on that, and then that earned them a title shot at Supercard of Honor, and that's how they ended up with that shot. So
Gotcha. So
it has
like
happened
6 weeks ago.
Yeah, that was, oh God, this is May. So yeah, that's about 6 weeks ago. Wow.
Yeah.
Which means it doesn't happen every week, but the possibility that it could is something that kind of hangs over us.
Yeah. Well, it seems like, as far as storyline, because the Infantry is like part of ROH, but when you have somebody who's kind of not, I appreciate that they give them like their credentials and who they are and why we should know them. But then it's kind of like, okay, well, the likelihood of them actually getting past the 10 minutes in order to prove that they could possibly be champion is just like not as believable. You know what I'm saying? So there's those kind of, because now you have to suspend belief in not knowing the rules and regulations, and also like the politics backstage. Like if you're not signed to AEW or ROH, highly unlikely that you're gonna. So then it's like, okay, well, we know this is gonna lose. Nonetheless, all the politics and all that stuff aside, great match. I think Kyle Fletcher always guaranteed a great match with him.
Yeah, and to that particular point about what might or might not go on the back, we often won't know until we see the result of the match. So if one of these parties was able to win a proving ground match and they weren't signed, it might be an indicator that there's some consideration to signing them, or at least highlighting them in a significant way, which I think is of great importance. And so Kyle Fletcher walks away with the win, but we end up learning an awful lot about Mentolo in this, thanks to, as you mentioned, the commentary team, which I got to shout out Caprice Coleman, Ian Riccaboni. Really, what they were able to do during this show was of incredible significance. And I've said it on this before, but I'll say it again. A lot of people, when they look at a great wrestling match or a great wrestling show, always put all of the credit on the 2 or 4 people or however many people are in the ring. But it is often the people that you don't see on camera that are incredibly significant to what you see in front of you, including the referee, your ring announcer, and your commentators. And in this particular case, the job of commentary, I think in episode 64, shown like new money, as there were a lot of people who we might have walked into this show unfamiliar with. And by the time we were done, we were like, okay, there's a real case for them potentially, winning this match. And this is why we should care about this. So this will be a theme that you see throughout this particular episode. So shout out again to Caprice Coleman and Ian Riccaboni, who always do an absolutely stellar job on commentary. And one of the things that we learned about Mentolo is that, he's a legend in Canada who spent quite a bit of time in the early days of Kenny Omega, kind of serving as a mentor and getting several wins over him, which there was that theme throughout this episode as well, in terms of some of the people that we saw on camera. So shout out again to Kyle Fletcher, who I will also say before we get off of this match is so head and shoulders right now above the remaining talent that he ends up fighting, that I'm interested in seeing who they are really going to build up to actually battle this guy. I mean, think about this. He was the first opponent on Dynamite for Will Ospreay. And that says an awful lot about what this guy can do in the ring. So we'll see what happens in terms of the television championship. But Kyle Fletcher walks away with another win. So we also on this episode saw a debut. We saw Jay Lethal return to Ring of Honor for the first time in quite a while, but he brought with him this time Satnam Singh. Satnam Singh, 7'4", representing India. We've seen him on AEW many times, but not so much on Ring of Honor. So Jay Lethal and Satnam Singh battle the Dark Order in this next match. What were your thoughts on this one?
It was it was comical in a very good way. I mean, Satnam Singh, like a lot of the guys were like literally probably below his waistline. So there was that. I love how they obviously played on that. So it was a great match. I almost feel, well, because ROH was only like an hour this time around as well. If this was like a longer show, then this would be later on in the show, just to kind of give people a little bit of break. But it was a great match, and I'm curious to see how this is going to play out with Jay Lethal and Satnam Singh as far as ROH is concerned, because even though we know AEW and ROH are the same universe, it's still the different universe.
Yes.
So I want to see how this storyline is going to going to play out? And is he going to do more of, obviously when I see him, I feel like the commentators kind of hinted at it, almost like an Andre the Giant feel, but way more
Sure.
muscular, way more in shape, 2024 version. So yeah, it'd be interesting. Although I hate being this person, shipping people off to WWE. I would be curious as far as how he would look in WWE.
I will say that I think he has an intimidating presence. I'm not sure that his in-ring work would be ready for a WWE, especially a 2024 WWE, where
Mhm.
the expectation would be that the big man can do more than just be big, you
Right.
know? So you look at like a Dijak right now, or you look at, a Josh Briggs, or even an Obafemi, who
Mhm.
are big guys, but they
That
can
can
move
do.
and they're very, very athletic.
Yeah.
Satnam Singh, of course, a former basketball player, you would automatically think, okay, well, he can move, but considering how long he's been in AEW and how he's been showcased, if he were more athletic, much like a younger Big Show or even a
Mhm.
younger Andre the Giant, he would end up on our television screens more. So my hope is that with him being in Ring of Honor, that maybe this is the opportunity for him to really get those reps in and showcase what he can do. I mean, he's surrounded by Jay Lethal, Jeff Jarrett, a lot of veterans who can help him. The only challenge, though, with being a veteran is there are very few veterans who are 7'4".
Right. Right.
So it'll be interesting to see. And for the Dark Order, who I guess on paper, this would be a match one would be more interested in than,
Mhm.
some of the proving ground matches that we would see on this episode. What's challenging is how you can convince people on paper that the Dark Order could beat Jay Lethal and Satnam Singh purely off of Satnam Singh's size alone.
Mhm.
And so, of course, they had the optics of Satnam Singh and Johnny Hungy, which kind of reminds me again of, when they had the great Khali and Rey Mysterio kind of staring at each other, and that just kind of eye to navel kind of
Mhm.
space that happened there. So it'll be interesting. I also thought it was interesting that as intimidating as Satnam Singh is on paper, Satnam Singh was actually brought to his knees in this matchup. Which in
Yeah.
my head, I'm like, for a giant, you should never be on your knees. Like,
Right.
there's just, unless you're against somebody who is obviously your size. So it does make me wonder, kind of what the plan is for Satnam Singh. And to your point, is this kind of a one-off in terms of us seeing Satnam Singh and Jay Lethal in a Ring of Honor ring, or will this become something a bit more regular that we see?
Right. Well, even how like Jay started off and there was, I wouldn't say it was a hesitation, but it's kind of, I think of Braun Strowman when,
Mhm.
he was tagging, right? It's like when he tagged, it was a wrap. Like nobody wanted to
Yes.
be in the ring. And I just to your point, I didn't get that feeling. And obviously it doesn't have to be the same every time when you have somebody that is, taller than everybody else,
Right.
extraordinary taller. But I just didn't get that fear factor that
Yes.
other superior, like super tall folks usually get. And so I don't
Right.
know if that was the game plan
Mhm.
or it just happened to be like that, but it was definitely like, oh, okay, like, yeah, it just
Mhm.
didn't, it's like, okay, this is different.
Right, right. It's very different. And again, you don't normally see most giants presented that way. So
Hmm.
it'll be interesting to see kind of what ends up happening with Satnam Singh going forward. But again, Jay Lethal and Satnam Singh get the win over the Dark Order, thanks to the lethal injection from Jay Lethal. So there we go with that. That was followed by a promo from the Iron Savages. Now, if you've been following this show, you'll know that one of the things that we have talked about over the last few weeks have been these promos that have been happening backstage.
Hmm.
Most of them, including one from 2 weeks ago from the Iron Savages, was pretty amazing. It was pretty intense. It kind of showcased their changing of the guard from being these happy-go-lucky, joyful, joking kinds of personas to being very, very serious about what they're doing. What did you think about this promo, which again did not have, Arkani Aura doing the interviewing? It was just these three kind of old school talking to a camera. What were your thoughts?
I like it. It's kind of the version. It's a really great setup. I like what they're doing. They're provide within the hour, where it seems like that's kind of where their sweet spot is for the last couple of weeks. Within the hour, there's like it seems like there's a plan. Like, and I always kind of reference this, the whiteboard or the blackboard for our producer, Dylan. It's just kind of like you have this and you know the trajectory, you know where they're going, and they're doing the steps. And in those steps, they're telling the story. And so I definitely feel like there's definitely, from their last promo to this one, it made sense. It's like, oh, I remember what they were talking about last time. This is an add-on to it to build up to whenever we're going to see them.
Right.
And it although very distracting with the what is it called? The boob, the nipple hopping, his chesticles. Very distracting. I was just kind of like, I might actually have to go back and watch it again because I'm not entirely sure what they said, but I know it's like, oh, like this a lot of this appreciation. Not everybody can do that.
No, not everyone can do that. That is for sure. And again, the old school nature of this particular show is one where you have space for that. And one of the things that I really gathered, certainly from this week and the previous weeks of Ring of Honor, is that they are definitely slow burning. Almost all of the stories that are happening, they are almost, you can have perhaps up to 6 different spaces that you can put your particular light on if you have a certain kind of stove, and theirs is on 1. Like we're not on 4, almost full blast. They are slow burning a lot of these stories, which means you kind of have to watch to really see these little pieces that are happening here and there. I'm interested in how all of this will translate in ring for the Iron Savages. And there's a part of me that wonders how many more of these backstage interviews we need from them before we start really seeing the change in ring. Because as big as they are, they should end up being very dominant. And if they are, then I think you could see them potentially as challengers for the tag team champions, the Undisputed Kingdom, or even, perhaps go after the trios championships currently held by Bullet Club Gold. So this was interesting for sure. And in the past, in these past few shows, they've had like multiple promos during, which is awfully cool. This time there were not very many backstage promos. This was one of maybe 2. Let me make sure I'm right on that. Not even it was one of 2. One of 2. So not a promo heavy show this particular episode, but again, like all of those backstage promos, there is purpose behind it, and that was the case for the Iron Savages. Up next, we would see Anna Jay in action as she took on Tara Zepp. And here again was a moment for our commentary team to really help build a case for why we should be paying attention to Tara Zepp. And so they had pretty much a tough job ahead of them, but they did that. Of course, everyone is familiar with Anna Jay, having watched Ring of Honor or AEW. And Anna Jay had an interesting moment in this match where she certainly dominated and could have won by pinfall, but chose to instead go the route of a submission, getting the submission win. What were your thoughts on Anna Jay's match?
I loved it. And actually, I remember, I really need to find that interview because we interviewed her, like, I think when she first started with AEW. But I loved it. And then it also makes me question, because the commentating team brought up the Jericho appreciation and how, they made it sound like she was a good girl, and then she started hanging out with them, and, she picked up some dastardly ways. And it kind of, in them saying that, and then her going for the submission when she could have easily got the tap out, was just like, you know, you have to, there's the story in it. Like those
Mm-hmm.
little tidbits of things, like just like you were talking about earlier today, as how the commentary team is telling the story within the wrestling, and the timing of it was just perfect, because it's like,
Yeah.
wait, why you already won though? Like, you know,
Right.
what are we doing?
Right.
Which makes me question what's going to happen next, because
Mm-hmm.
it seems like this would be something that, like, depending on, and I know we'll definitely get to it, depending on when Athena drops, this would be like almost like a really great matchup to,
Mm-hmm.
you know, match somebody like Athena, who also does, you know, some not so great things.
Right.
So it would, like, definitely want to see how that would play out.
Yeah, yeah, and I think, now with the World Television Championship in play as well, that's another opportunity for her against the Billy Starks, which again, both of them having been influenced by influencers, be that Athena or the Jericho Appreciation Society,
Right.
to see kind of how they would last in all of that. And I think what's important is, again, in Ring of Honor, them presenting additional uh, competitors for these potential champions to face. So when we're looking at future contenders, we can now talk potentially about Anna Jay in there, and her getting these opportunities here that she might not get in AEW is also a win. So
Mhm.
shout out to Anna Jay, who, strangely enough, and I don't know why I'm bringing this up, but when you start thinking about the pinnacle of where she has been,
Mhm.
she had that one moment, I believe, on Rampage several months ago that kind of produced a t-shirt where she talked about, a certain part of her anatomy, and she also mentioned that she has a bad attitude, and it turned into a t-shirt and kind of a slightly viral moment for her. But she hasn't really been able to capitalize on that as of late.
Mhm.
So it'll be interesting to see if her star can rise while she's in Ring of Honor in these kinds of presentations. So we'll certainly see how that will work. Moving on from there into a matchup that I think is very interesting. Rachel Ellering and Sky Blue. And this match really became a thing for us to pay attention to before we even heard about it, thanks to what happened last week
Mhm.
in terms of a fan really being obnoxious towards Sky Blue. That's when we first found out about this taping. We didn't know what even happened in the match, but instead we found out, how according to Rachel, they all kind of left very quickly to address this particular fan and the like. So naturally, there's a part of me that's watching this match trying to see, can I hear what the fan is saying? Will
Dang,
they
it was in
show this?
Canada too.
Yeah.
Now it's all, man, what? We don't do that. Who is this guy?
Yeah. It
Anyway,
was
sorry, go
wild.
on.
No. It was wild. And I'm curious, with that news as a backdrop, did it pepper how you watched the match? And what did you think of Rachel Ellering versus Sky Blue?
I actually thought it didn't.
Okay.
It ironically didn't, because I also watched it at like 3 o'clock this morning.
Fair
Um,
enough.
I it didn't until you just said it. And
Okay.
there was something when I saw the match card. I was like, you know how there's something here, but
Mm-hmm.
you didn't put the two things together.
Right.
What I really got out of it, I thought Rachel was gonna win. So I was
I
actually
did
really
too.
surprised that Sky Blue won. And this is not, this is more on the storyline, not to speaking to her as a person or anything like that. I
Yeah.
just thought
Yeah.
storyline wise, Rachel was gonna take it. And
Mm-hmm.
so I love surprises like that when you think you know what's gonna happen and it doesn't. So
Mm-hmm.
it really made me curious again, like as far as what's gonna happen with Sky Blue. And then also we have Rachel and Maria. And
Right.
if Maria's thoughts that she had last week is something that's going to be peppered throughout the women's division,
Mm-hmm.
and is that going to make a play, like they prove her wrong, and almost like a hybrid of what's the Women's Wrestling Army, almost
Mm-hmm.
bringing brought up underneath ROH in some way, shape, or form. where now she's kind of almost the head of creative for the women's division, almost like Gail Kim is, that type of
Okay.
situation. So there's kind of multiple things happening that's making me really curious as far as all that. But Sky Blue coming out with that win, and it wasn't like a cheating win. It was like, nah,
No.
she got it.
Yeah.
Especially with Rachel's dominance through the majority of the match.
Right.
It was a great match.
Absolutely. Shout out to our our producer, Dylan. Always good to see you. And yeah, it's like midnight where you are. It's so wild. So wild. But thank you for joining us. And so you're right. Rachel did dominate this matchup and looked really good doing it. It's one of the stronger showings that we've seen for Rachel Ellering. And against Sky Blue, who has had such success in AEW, this really was kind of a matchup of two equals to a degree. And they were back and forth throughout the match. Several moments where I thought the match would end and it didn't. So certainly one of the better matches on this card, and one of those matches that even coming into it, you couldn't predict what was going to happen based on everything that you said. Now, what I do find to be interesting is, there was this almost loose affiliation that Sky Blue had with the House of Black because of what happened between her and her name just left me that fast. The former TNT champion or TBS champion, Julia Hart. Yeah. And so they were connected together for a while, and you would see Sky Blue kind of very much still behave as though she was under the influence of the House of Black. Now, while she wasn't wearing her trademark blue on last night's episode, she had her black on, but she didn't fully act as though she was still in House of Black, which is where I would have expected some sort of chicanery in her winning this match against Rachel. But we didn't have that. So I don't know character-wise what that does for Sky Blue, other than to say, hey, I just could show that I could wrestle. I also found it interesting as I was watching to see how, whatever was being said by this obnoxious fan would impact her. And, to me, it showed that she's a true professional because she was able to just kind of plow through. There was a part of me that was hoping that they would catch whatever happened on camera, but I also noticed by the angle that they operated at that they didn't, particularly when she won and they focused directly up on her and not on anybody else, and then went to whatever was next. I was like, okay, so everything popped off after that.
Yeah, they did a hard edit.
Yeah, they did, which I expected them to do. I didn't expect them to fully show this, and they did not reference it at all. And it's equally interesting because in a future match, there was an interesting fan interaction that happened that they did show. So we'll get into that at some point.
Oh, yeah, that was really
good. It was a wild one. So Sky Blue gets the win. I love her finisher. I wish I remembered the name of it, but I love her finisher. It is very, very creative. And it does draw some questions to what happens to Rachel Ellering now.
The code blue.
Code Blue. Thank you. The way she gets into it is fantastic. I just love it, love it, love it. But what does happen to Rachel Ellering now? At one point she was teaming with Layla Hirsch. That's not happening. She was kind of dismissed last week by why are her names escaping me? Maybe it's just early in the morning. Maria, thank you. And so it'll be interesting to see if that comment, which caught me off guard last week, will come back into play in the future between Maria and Rachel. We'll find out, obviously, for sure. But a big win for Sky Blue. Then we have our second promo, which I thought was shot extremely well because it was not the normal, hey, we're just talking to one camera, but it was shot different. It included, footage from the matchup between Spanish Announce Project and Maria Kanellis' tag team of Cole Carter and Griff Garrison. It referenced what happened, I believe it was last week, where in that matchup, once again, Serpentico's mask was stolen, and you got to really see, just the thoughts of Angelico. Y'all thought I was joking last week when I said it depending upon the week. Well, this week had a different pronunciation of Angelico. So it wasn't me being shady, but it definitely was an interesting promo and it alluded to the fact that we will likely get yet another match between these two teams. What did you think of this promo from the Spanish Announce Project?
I I like the I like the promo. There's a couple of things. It's kind of like there's a couple of theories. So say, y'all know I'm with my bad analogies, you in school, right? Somebody keeps stealing your lunch money, and they've been stealing it for like 6 months.
Mhm.
And on the 7th month, you're like, nah, it's not gonna happen again. But they've been stealing it from you for 6 months. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
it looks like it's probably gonna happen again.
Mhm.
And I don't want it to, because
Yeah.
nobody wants to get beaten up. But then when Angelico finished up and he started doing the dance, I'm like, you guys are definitely gonna lose. You guys are gonna lose again. Like this. he finished up with the dance. I was just like,
Mhm.
I don't think you serious, because when you're ready to squabble and scrap, like
Right.
you're not dancing.
Right.
So, so it's a good promo, but I was like, yeah, I don't have any faith that y'all gonna come out with that W.
No, I'm with you. What's so interesting is just watching the evolution of Angelico, who some might remember all the way back in the Lucha Underground days,
Yeah.
where he was just a monster there. I mean, he was always on top of things, literally leaping off of the top of ceilings and whatnot. Like, he was just that guy. So it's interesting to kind of watch how he has evolved in AEW and Ring of Honor, being a part of this tag team, being more of a submission specialist now than a daredevil. And you're right. I'm intrigued to see if they can be serious enough and angry enough to really go in and have this kind of fight that it seems like you would have, given what the masks represent for Serpentico and the like. So we'll see when that comes into play. We are about 2 months away from the next big event for Ring of Honor, which is Death by Dishonor. And so the question to me is, it looks like they are obviously slow building to perhaps this rematch on that card, which seems like a big enough kind of card for it. Can we go another 8 weeks on this? I don't know, but we'll see. There are ways that they could do it if we can maintain interest in those 8 weeks. But we will see. We will certainly see. From there, speaking of tag teams, we move to one of a couple of tag team matches that happened. John Cruz and Levi Knight taking on Darius Martin and Action Andretti. And one of the interesting things that I didn't know what to do with coming into this matchup was Arkani Ora, who was the ring announcer, announcing them as Top Flight. And my thought was that Top Flight was Darius and Dante, and they always treated it as Top Flight and Action Andretti, though Andretti has stepped in, to sub for either of those partners when they were out injured or what have you. So I don't know if they, are subtly telling us that Action Andretti is now a part of Top Flight or not. That was just kind of one of those interesting takeaways here in this particular matchup. What did you think of this tag team match?
Yeah, it was the same, because when they won, she didn't say Top Flight, she said their names.
Right.
So I was like, oh,
Right.
this is interesting. So maybe it might have been a faux pas or whatever. Levi Knight, a Canadian, so shout out to our commentary team for giving us all the data on Levi. I don't know if there's like a 70s resurgence for wrestlers. There's also like this theme in WoW too. We have like a aerobics instructor as a wrestler.
Oh, wow.
Delilah Doom has been doing it forever, so I would definitely give her credit if this is where everything jumped off at. But Levi, it was just like the mustache, I'm almost curious to see what he looks like on a regular day, because like all this looks very legit. Like all this looks very like, this is what I look like every day, and I just so happen to add some sparkly pants.
Right.
It was a great, and then John Cruz, we've seen him before, so it was a great match. But it's kind of the same thing that I referenced the first match. Like, we've seen John Cruz before, but he's also partnering with somebody else that the commentary team had to introduce us to.
Right.
Clearly, he's not signed to the brand, so then it's like, okay, this is going to be a great match. Not negating that I don't like great wrestling matches, but it's also like, if I can guess the end, then it's just kind of not as enthralling to me. Like, okay,
Sure.
well, they're definitely gonna win, but it was a good match nonetheless. Like,
Right.
I want to say every time. I just feel like John, and they gave, for people who didn't know John Cruz, they gave him his credit too. Like, definitely, he's a technician. He's somebody who's been in the game for a long period of time. So
Yeah.
the likelihood of you getting a terrible match from him is, slim to none.
Right. And it's interesting because, again, this is kind of, again, that formula that we've seen with old school wrestling where they would have a tag match with a familiar star that you've seen before, and then someone else who you're unfamiliar with, and you go, okay, well, this could win if the established star stays in the ring, but if they tag in the new guy, we kind of know what's going to happen. And we had a couple of moments where it looked like, okay, well, maybe Levi Knight and Cruz could sneak a win on this one, which that's part of what I guess they're there to do. But Darius Martin, Action Andretti getting the win. And yeah, part of the challenge here is, again, as we have alluded to before, what this Ring of Honor show can do well is clearly highlight certain talent. The challenge is, okay, does this lead to Darius Martin and Action Andretti at some point entering the tag team title picture? Or again, is this just kind of a one-off because Dante Martin couldn't be there? And so obviously we won't know that for a few weeks until we see them on our TV screens again. Normally in Ring of Honor, we see them as a trios kind of team or a six-man tag. So we'll see. Either way, I think it's a good showing for them. And what will the future hold? That is always the question that we find ourselves asking in a scenario like this. So speaking of tag teams, we move now to the tag team champions in another proving ground match. The Undisputed Kingdom, the Ring of Honor World Tag Team Champions, going against Jason Geiger and London Lightning. Once again, proving ground rules, 10-minute time limit. And it is the job of the challengers to either defeat the champions or to manage to go the full 10 minutes. And if you go the full time limit, you will get a title match. Now, Undisputed Kingdom has found themselves in these kinds of matches quite a bit lately. It seems like almost every week they're in a proving ground match. We alluded to earlier in the show that about 6 weeks ago, they lost this proving ground match against the Infantry. Not long after that, they ended up battling the Outrunners and almost lost that particular match as it went about 8 minutes in terms of time limit. What were your thoughts on this match involving Jason Geiger and London Lightning?
I believe they said London Lightning's from Canada as well. So
Yes.
obviously a lot of Canadian wrestlers being in Canada makes sense.
Right.
I thought it was a good match. Cue the drinking game. I
Yeah.
thought it was a good match. It's kind of one of the, like, it's kind of one of those things where I like the fact that ROH brings in a lot of enhancement talent, right? We're introduced to people that we might not see on our TV screens, also giving those people opportunities to be on TV screens. However, it kind of really takes away from
Okay. I can't tell what is happening right now. And I hate that I can't tell what's happening right now. I don't know if I'm on. I don't know if TK is stuck. I'm not sure. So if you're in the chat, like, let me know if you can hear what's happening here. Um, and we'll try to oh, okay. So I think I lost TK in the process. All right. So she was talking about just this match and what's happening in here. I think one of the interesting challenges and one of the beautiful parts about what we're seeing in Ring of Honor is that we are getting introduced to new talent. And sometimes I think we might be spoiled by some of the other programs that are happening involving, whether it's Dynamite, Collision, or Rampage, or even a Raw, SmackDown, NXT, TNA. All of these spaces these days are bringing us more competitive matches and fewer matches involving enhancement talent. In this particular case, we're now looking at learning, I think, about who some of these new figures are that people are unaware of. And I think we're in a space right now where we get to learn about a Jason Geiger, learn about a London Lightning, see what they're able to do individually and as tag teams. And I think that they put up a solid showing. I don't know that anybody walked into this saying, hey, we think Undisputed Kingdom could lose, but it ended up being a very competitive match. Undisputed Kingdom getting the win, but I definitely think I want to see both Jason Geiger and London Lightning on my television screen again. All right, from there we move to the main event, which was Athena, the Ring of Honor Women's World Champion, defending against Nicole Matthews. Once again, a proving ground match, and this is why we said that this episode is called Prove Yourself, because a lot of athletes had the opportunity to do just that, prove themselves as worthy competitors for championship opportunities. Now, I'll tell you, this is where, again, I really want to shout out our commentary team of Ian Riccaboni and Caprice Coleman, because they did a stellar job of what arguably this graphic did not do. Nicole, whose last name was not even put on here, when you look at the graphic, you might think to yourself, well, this is just another bit of enhancement talent. But as Nicole Matthews, as our commentary team was able to show us, Nicole was far more than just a last name. Her being Nicole Matthews, and then all that she had done, there was a part of me that was just going, I think it's a little unfortunate that this graphic nor her ring announcement gave her the just due that she deserved. I mean, here it is, Nicole Matthews, 20 plus years in the business, which again, commentary did a great job of putting this over. Also talking about who she's fought over time, her time in Shimmer, and they even referenced her as your favorite wrestler's favorite wrestler. Huge for somebody to just get one name on this graphic. What did you think about this match and the presentation of Nicole Matthews?
Presentation wise, I mean, she hit it out of the park. On other levels, I wonder why she's not signed, because there's a lot of Canadian wrestlers in wrestling, all over the place. But yeah, I remember, and correct me if I'm wrong, I believe she was also in the Mae Young Classic.
She might have been. I have to go back and see, because I didn't remember initially seeing her, and then I was like, oh snap, wow.
Yeah. The fact that they brought up, and again, this is the problem. It's kind of like, and obviously we don't want the fake TK signing a bunch of wrestlers.
Sure.
I feel like he's at capacity, but when you have great wrestlers like Nicole Matthews, where you could put on a legitimately good match, a great match, but knowing that there's no way that she's gonna win. And I guess maybe that's the naivete of me, where it's just kind of like, well, that this is how it's gonna play out, because logistically it just can't happen. And so maybe it's for me getting over that hump and just really just enjoying the match. So this is me having a revelation moment. But other than that, it was a great match. I mean, how Athena, did we talk about the ending yet?
No, we haven't talked about that yet. We just got into
Oh my God. So, I mean, Athena is, I mean, she's the forever champ, as we know.
She is.
52-0. she had a lot of great spots as she went. So did Nicole. But you know, after that was said and done, Queen Aminata coming out, like it really had me, whoever decided on the angling, I think like the director or whatever the name is for, you know, in wrestling terms, who decided on the angling, but the way they angled her while she was in the ring and then how she came out and looked at Athena and walked off, it just seemed like, oh, this is going to be our next champion.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
They already have plans for Athena, which makes me kind of scared because we already, and we've talked about this ad nauseum, we already see what happens. It's kind of almost like when wrestlers went from NXT to the main roster and they just got lost in the sauce, the dominance and stuff like that. And so it kind of makes me a little bit weary as far as what's going to happen to Athena. But it is coming up on that time. Like she, unfortunately, and you know, if you ever listen to this, Athena, don't kill me. You're not going to be the forever champion. So, you know, the time is coming, and it seems like Queen Aminata is in the position for that, which makes me think that, you know, is Red Velvet, you know, taking away Billy's title, and like how that's going to play out. So yeah, we'll have to talk about this off the thing. I had a crazy, because I watched this at 3:00 in the morning.
Okay.
And I had this crazy dream about Queen Aminata, Red Velvet, and there's like another wrestler, and they all had titles. So
interesting.
Yeah, it was. So maybe it's foreshadowing. I don't know, or maybe I'm
wow.
But but great. It's just, yeah, great. Like, you see how Queen Aminata lost to Billy in the way that she lost, with the shenanigans. And the way she presented herself is like, yeah, I'm not falling. Y'all could be really, really hurt, and I'm not falling for it, and I don't care.
Right. A couple of things, and I meant to post this, and so forgive me, but Nicole Matthews dropped an amazing tweet about what happened last night, and I again meant to show it to you guys, but she says, quote, "Huge shout out to Caprice Coleman and Ian Riccaboni for their excellent commentary on Ring of Honor. Sometimes you feel invisible being an older indie woman wrestler, but it's very gratifying to hear acknowledgement and recognition from the big dogs in the pro wrestling scene." I think that is just so telling and so wonderful in terms of, again, what Ian Riccaboni and Caprice Coleman bring to the table, and how important that is. Because again, just judging from the graphic, Nicole doesn't even have a last name. And so you would have no idea, judging from this graphic, all that she's accomplished, all that she's done. And, you know, you might wonder, well, why haven't we heard more about her? Well, to think of what she was doing in 2004, you know, and in Shimmer and in those kinds of places. In 2004, we were still getting 2-minute matches for women's wrestling in WWE. We didn't have a WCW at that point. TNA was just starting, and their knockouts division wouldn't really pop off until 2008. So her contributions were lost. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. And because she hadn't had the privilege of being on one of these larger stages, there was nobody to really tell this story. So shout out again to Ian Riccaboni, Caprice Coleman. I don't want to sound like a broken record, but I cannot overemphasize or overstate how important their role was in this particular episode. You know, when an Allison Kay shows up, most of us are familiar enough with her to fill in the blanks. If a Marty Bell shows up, we can fill in the blanks. But when a Nicole, who doesn't even have a last name, shows up, most of us, I remember, it wasn't until commentary for this match that I literally asked, well, why is this the main event? Like, I literally asked that because I was like, you had these other people that we're all more familiar with that seems like a far more competitive match. But it wasn't until we get into the match, because even the intros, the intro, she's already standing in the ring, and it was almost like a forgotten kind of thing. Oh, yeah. And by the way, here's Nicole, you know. Now, as I was thinking about it, as you were talking, I was like, one of the thoughts that hit me was, What they could have done, which they've done in AEW before, was they could have run some highlights of Nicole Matthews
Right.
throughout the show to build up why this match is the main event. You know, given these last couple of weeks, the main events have all had stories connected to them, things that we could go, I see why this is the main event. Coming into this, I had no idea why this was the main event. None at all. And again, it wasn't until commentary did what they did that I went, oh, you mean she's got wins over Athena?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay. So now we are building up something that would make us interested. So if I were to offer any feedback to Ring of Honor, it is when you have these kinds of stars that have done these kinds of things and they're gonna be in your main event. It costs nothing. They could have added an easy 2 minutes to this show because it wasn't a long show at all, with a highlight package on what Nicole Matthews has done, why she's in this particular match, one of only a handful of people from Athena's past to have a win over her. Can she come and do it now on this bright stage? Boom.
Yeah, that would have been a great promo package.
Yeah, it would have. And so I hope that they will consider doing those kinds of things, because I do think one of the things that they do well is bring in these names that we might not be familiar with, but that
Mm-hmm.
has significant history. And so I think they could have done that. Either way, episode 62 was certainly an episode, 64, which is where we are, is certainly an episode that's worth you going back to check out on Honor Club for everything that we have mentioned here. A lot of great matches. And again, these are kind of the moments that are building clearly to something larger. And you want to go back and reference this particular episode. Any closing thoughts on episode 64?
No, I'm really, just like I said, that Queen Aminata and Athena, where that's going to be, Anna J, Sky Blue, like there's just there's a lot of great stories on Slow Burn, which is a good thing. But yeah, like echoing your sentiments, the commentating team did an amazing, I often wish that, because oftentimes what happens when we see folks that are not signed, that enhancement talent, it's oftentimes people on Twitter that will like clue us in. So it's nice on a bigger platform that like we kind of know the pedigree. It's not just somebody, out of wrestling school, which sometimes it is too. But we also have these veterans coming in, and it'd be nice to know who everybody is.
Right. I'll also mention, just kind of piggybacking off of something we mentioned in previous weeks, I think one of the good things that happened on social media this week was this ongoing building between Athena, Billy Starks, Red Velvet, and Queen Aminata, where they really took to social media to do some formalized promos, talk trash, wear similar gear for Red Velvet and Queen Aminata. Which really built to a point that you made last week and the week before, like, okay, is this going to be something that continues regularly? And it looks like at least it is on social media, which I can live with, because if we're using that to build between episodes, that is equally important as what we see on our television screens. So that's a look at episode 64 of Ring of Honor. Again, you can go back and watch it on Honor Club or at watchroh.com. Now, you guys know the deal, because it's her house. She closes out the show. So you can find me, of course, at Bonnerfied across all of the social spaces. You can check out my commentary work with Southern Honor and IWE, both of which dropped new shows on IWTV this week. So go back and check that out if you get a chance. Plus, you can check out my commentary work with the Nightmare Factory, Turnbuckle Championship Wrestling, All Caribbean Wrestling, all on their respective YouTube pages. Some great things happening with all of those spaces. And of course, Ashe Wrestling, AsheWrestling.com is the website. We've got a huge show coming up for June the 22nd. We might talk some more about it today on WWT Live at 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. 3 p.m. Pacific, where you'll find me, the Boss Lady, and our other remaining cast of characters as we talk about all things in the space of pro wrestling. And as you know, there's plenty to talk about. I yield the floor to the boss lady.
Plenty to talk about and plenty of characters. You guys can follow me. Thanks for watching. You can follow me everywhere at tktrinidad. You can follow Women's Wrestling Talk on all social media platforms at wwtalkpod, wwtalkpod.com. With that being said, thank you guys so much for watching Women's Wrestling Talk, the #1 women's wrestling show on the planet. Till next time, guys. Ciao for now.
What's up, guys? It's your girl Red Velvet from straight out of your mama's kitchen, doing what I do best, stirring it up, and you are now watching Women's Wrestling Talk.
Thanks for joining WWT. Don't forget to like us on all social media platforms at wwtalkpod. Like and subscribe on all video and audio platforms, like yesterday, my G. And check out our website at wwtalkpod.com. Thanks for watching.